Welcome to What the F Happened, Fraud and Financial Crime Deconstructed, a Defend podcast where we break down what's actually happening across fraud, scams, AML, and financial crime.
Each episode cuts through the noise to explain the tactics, trends, and real-world impact behind the headlines, so you're better prepared for what comes next. Let's get into it. Imagine an AI that autonomously infiltrates a corporate network. Like, it maps out the architecture on its own, actively hunts for weaknesses, and then executes a complete, devastating hack.
From start to finish.
From start to finish.
Yeah.
And it does this in 32 perfectly calculated steps, entirely unsupervised. I mean, it sounds exactly like the opening scene of a sci-fi thriller.
It really does. But it actually happened.
Yeah, this was a real event during the internal testing of a brand new AI model. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one because it is, well, it's massive.
It is. We've got an incredible stack of source material today centered around this deeply detailed analysis by Yinglian Shi at DataVisor. And our mission today is to unpack what Anthropic's newly released Claude Mythos model actually means for you.
Because it does impact everyone listening.
Totally. We're talking about the daily security of your own money, your personal data, and honestly, just the structural integrity of the entire global financial ecosystem.
Yeah, the stakes couldn't be higher.
And, you know, the source material features this striking, completely unforgettable image that I kind of want to anchor us on. It's this freshly painted, bright green picket fence.
Oh, yeah, I love that metaphor.
Right. It looks absolutely perfect from the curb. But right in the middle of it, there's this jagged, rotting hole smashed completely through the wood.
Which is just the perfect visual for where we find ourselves right now in global cybersecurity.
How so?
Well, from the outside, you look at your banking app, or our digital infrastructure in general, and it all looks incredibly modernized and secure. It's slick.
Smooth animations, Face ID, all that.
Exactly. But structurally, deep down in the code, there are these massive fundamental vulnerabilities that we have basically just painted over with a nice user interface.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the scale of the disruption here it's just wild. And I think we need to understand what Claude Mythos actually is before we look at what it can break.
That's a good place to start.
So Mythos is Anthropic's new frontier, general-purpose AI. It sits completely above their Opus family in terms of raw intelligence. But here is a real shocker for me.
The fact that it wasn't supposed to be a hacker.
Yes. It wasn't explicitly built to be a cybersecurity tool at all. Its ability to hack is literally just a byproduct of it being generally smarter across the board.
Exactly. And understanding why that happens is crucial here. I mean, Anthropic didn't set out to build the world's greatest digital lockpick.
Right.
They set out to improve reasoning, advanced mathematics, and long horizon tasks, meaning the AI's ability to plan 10, 15 steps ahead without losing this train of thought.
Makes sense for a general AI.
Yeah, but because it got so remarkably good at understanding pure logic and complex code, it naturally just became incredibly proficient at finding the flaws in that logic.
So it's an emergent capability.
Completely emergent. For example, during their internal testing, it autonomously found a 27-year-old vulnerability in an operating system called OpenBSD.
Wait, 27 years? I mean, OpenBSD is foundational, isn't it? It's been around forever.
It is. It's a highly respected operating system known specifically for its security. And Mythos didn't stop there. It also found a 16-year-old bug in a framework called FFmpeg.
Okay, remind me what FFmpeg actually does.
To put it in plain English, it's essentially the hidden software engine that almost every single app uses to play audio and video. It is everywhere.
Wow.
And that specific line of code had been touched something like 5 million times by automated security tools over the years. None of them caught the flaw, but Mythos just spotted it.
That is wild. My analogy here is it feels like hiring a brilliant mathematician to do your taxes, right?
Right.
And while they're doing your taxes, they accidentally realize they're the world's greatest lock pickers just because they inherently understand the physics of doors.
That's actually a really great way to put it.
But finding a single bug is one thing. The materials highlight that it actively chained vulnerabilities together without human help. What does vulnerability chaining actually look like in practice?
So this is where we move from theory to true danger. Chaining means the AI doesn't just find a broken lock and stop. Imagine a bank vault.
Okay.
Finding a vulnerability isn't necessarily blowing the vault door off. It's realizing, hey, the air conditioning vent in the lobby is slightly loose.
Oh, I see.
That's bug number one.
Hmm.
So crawling through that vent lets you reach a stick that was left on the floor. That's bug number 2.
Right.
You use the stick to knock a security guard's keys off a desk. Bug number 3. And then the keys let you into the vault.
And it figures all that out on its own.
Yes. Mythos didn't just spot the loose vent. It mapped out the entire sequence, chained those totally distinct flaws together, and created a working exploit to get into the vault.
Okay, but if an AI that wasn't even specifically trained for this can figure out that sequence, how do we know where its limits are? Like, what's the ceiling?
We honestly don't entirely know the ceiling yet. Independent groups, like the UK's AI Security Institute, they ran tests and verified that Mythos can successfully complete 73% of expert-level cybersecurity challenges.
73%.
Right. Which means a very dangerous threshold of autonomous capability has officially been crossed.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
And it's exactly why Anthropic completely halted the public release of these specific capabilities. They essentially kept the safety on, and instead they launched Project Glasswing.
Project Glasswing, the shield.
Yes, the shield.
Because they essentially took, what, $100 million in usage credits and handed preview access to about 50 defensive organizations?
Yeah, massive players. Microsoft, JP Morgan, folks like that.
So they're giving the good guys a head start to fix their infrastructure before the attackers get their hands on this kind of tech.
It's a totally pragmatic race against time. If an AI can find vulnerabilities at this unprecedented scale, the only responsible action is to let the defenders scan their own systems.
Right, let them patch the holes.
Exactly. Patch the holes before open-source equivalents of Mythos inevitably flood the criminal underworld. Because they will.
So if we know Mythos is this accidental super hacker, what happens when it points its attention at the biggest target on Earth? I'm talking about the global financial sector.
It's bad.
How bad is the bleeding there right now?
It's severe. Just to give you a baseline, in 2025, the financial sector suffered 739 major data compromises. That was the highest of any industry globally.
Wow, higher than healthcare or retail.
Far higher. And it isn't just bad luck, it's a structural reality because financial institutions run the most complex interconnected technology stacks on the planet.
We are talking about, what, 5 or 6 generations of technology layered directly on top of each other?
Exactly.
This sounds like a terrifying game of digital Jenga. I mean, we are putting incredibly heavy modern AI applications on top of blocks that were cut in 1970. And nobody wants to pull the bottom block out to inspect it.
That is the perfect analogy, because that bottom block is literally COBOL.
The programming language.
Yes. COBOL is a programming language from the 1970s. And get this, it still runs over 80% of all credit card transactions and 95% of ATM operations globally.
That is insane. And the engineers who actually wrote that core code are, what, retired?
Retired or they passed away. We have this foundational code that has never been audited at the scale of modern AI.
Right. You can't just pause the global financial system on a Tuesday to swap out its foundation.
No, you can't. So it just sits there. And here is the terrifying part about an AI like Mythos. It doesn't need to invent some brilliant, futuristic attack vector.
It just needs a crack.
It just needs to find one single flaw buried in that unaudited 1970s code. When you point a system that can find a needle in 5 million lines of code at an infrastructure that hasn't been deeply scrutinized in decades,
It's going to find vulnerabilities.
it is going to find them.
This brings me right back to that image from the analysis. The bright green picket fence with the gaping hole in it. We are basically painting a nice, shiny mobile banking app on the front of a house, while the back wall is made of 50-year-old rotting wood.
Precisely. And honestly, it's actually worse than just old code.
Wait, how could it be worse?
Because of how interconnected the modern web is. The average financial institution doesn't operate in a vacuum. They rely on more than 130 third-party cloud software vendors. And they use them to do basic things, payroll, customer service, data storage.
Meaning, if just one of those 130 vendors has a vulnerability, it cascades directly into the bank.
Yes. Look at the Siege Technologies attack in India back in 2024.
Oh, I remember reading about that.
Yeah, Siege was just a shared service provider, just a vendor. But when they were compromised, it forced nearly 300 different banks to shut down temporarily.
300 banks offline from one weak link.
Yep. The blast radius of a single vendor flaw is massive.
And that was before an AI like Mythos existed to find those shared vulnerabilities in seconds. But wait, let's pivot a bit here. If the walls are that brittle, and they're full of holes, how are the attackers actually exploiting them to pull the money out?
That's where the evolution of fraud comes in.
Because I know fraud is exploding, but how are they weaponizing this AI specifically?
Well, the scale of the theft is staggering.
Yeah.
Global fraud losses hit $442 billion in 2025.
Unbelievable.
But what's really alarming is the shift in how they are doing it. We are entering an era of what researchers are calling machine-to-machine mayhem.
Machine to machine.
Yeah, we are moving away from, a human scammer sitting in a boiler room trying to trick a human victim over the phone.
Yeah.
Now, we have agentic AI systems actively battling the automated defense bots at the banks.
Okay, break down the word agentic for us, because that word gets thrown around a lot in tech right now. What does it actually mean for the AI to have agency in this context?
It means the AI isn't just following a static script of if-then commands. It has autonomy.
So it makes decisions.
Exactly. An agentic AI hits a bank's firewall, realizes, okay, this cord is blocked, and independently decides to pivot its strategy in real time.
Wow.
It might decide to immediately scrape LinkedIn, find a mid-level employee at the bank, and generate a highly personalized phishing attack instead. And it does all of this without a human hacker ever clicking a button.
And their tactics are completely industrializing. From the analysis, they aren't just making a fake ID in Photoshop anymore. They are building what are called synthetic identities.
Yeah, yes, synthetic identities are a huge problem.
Because from what I understand, they use AI to build entire coherent clusters of fake people, right?
That's right. A single fake identity is relatively easy for a bank to spot. But the AI creates a fake person, and then it generates a fake employer for them.
It builds a whole backstory.
A backstory with a fake landlord and fake colleagues who all interact with each other online. They build an entire simulated reality that corroborates itself.
So by the time that synthetic identity applies for a loan, they look perfectly legitimate.
Perfectly legitimate. This specific tactic causes $30 to $35 billion in U.S. losses every single year.
Because traditional verification systems, the whole know your customer or KYC process, they were designed to spot a forged document.
Right.
They weren't designed to spot a completely coherent, artificially generated reality. But what about the biometrics?
The biometrics.
Because when a banking app asks you to turn your head and blink into the camera to prove you are real, how is the AI bypassing that?
It uses something called virtual camera injection. And the mechanics of this are both fascinating and terrifying.
Okay, how does it work?
The AI doesn't just hold up a high-res photo or a deepfake video to a physical camera. That would get caught. It actually intercepts the data feed inside the phone's operating system itself.
Wait, it gets between the camera and the app?
Yes. It sits between the physical camera hardware and the banking app, and it feeds the app's synthetic 3D video data.
So the app thinks it's recording you?
The app thinks it is receiving a live, authentic feed of your face, but it's entirely injected code.
And the sources say setting that up costs $15 and takes about 30 minutes.
That's all it takes now.
Wait, let me push back here. If AI can perfectly fake a face, a voice, and a passport at the operating system level for the price of a sandwich, how do we ever prove who we are to a bank again? I mean, is the password and the ID basically dead?
Static identification is absolutely dying.
Wow.
If you rely on what a user presents, so a password, a physical ID, a static facial scan, an AI can and will eventually spoof it. But the industry is fighting back with behavioral biometrics.
Behavioral biometrics?
Yes. The defense is shifting entirely. It no longer cares what you present. It only cares how you behave.
How I behave, like how I physically hold my phone.
Exactly that. From the absolute moment you open the app, it is continuously monitoring your typing cadence.
Seriously?
Seriously. It measures the exact pressure of your touch on the screen. It measures the specific micro angle you tilt your device and the speed of your scroll patterns.
And an AI can't fake that, because those are deeply ingrained subconscious motor patterns.
Right. And it's incredibly difficult for an AI to simulate perfectly across an entire user session. Because, frankly, humans are beautifully imperfect.
We make mistakes.
We do. A bot moves with linear perfection, but a real human hesitates. We scroll past a button, realize we missed it, and flick our thumb back up. We tap slightly harder when we're rushing or stressed.
That is so interesting.
Preliminary data shows this behavioral approach is 90% effective at catching automated money mules, simply because a bot doesn't hesitate the way a human does.
Okay, so let's play this out. Let's say the fraudster manages to spoof the camera, they perfectly mimic the scroll speed somehow, and they successfully steal $10 million from a bank.
Okay, scenario accepted.
They can't exactly wire that straight to their personal checking account without setting off every alarm in the building. How do they actually hide the money once they have it?
That introduces the massive failure of our anti-money laundering systems, or AML.
Right.
Current AML rules are generating an astonishing 95% false positive rate.
95%.
Yeah.
That means almost every single alarm that goes off is essentially a drill. Why is it failing that badly?
Because AML programs were built for slow human adversaries.
Oh, I see.
They use static rules and fixed thresholds, like, flagging any transaction exactly over $10,000.
The classic trigger.
Right. But when agentic AI starts moving stolen money around at machine speed, breaking it into thousands of microtransactions across hundreds of different accounts,
The legacy system just panics.
it panics. It throws up red flags on everything, burying human investigators in a mountain of legitimate transactions, while the actual criminals just slip right through the noise.
But here's the paradox that really surprised me from the sources. Crypto is actually ahead of traditional banking in catching some of this.
It is a fascinating irony, given crypto's early reputation. But the underlying mechanics of the blockchain make it highly effective for investigators
Because it's public.
because it's a public, immutable ledger.
Yeah.
Every single transaction is permanently recorded. So when you combine that mathematical certainty with modern on-chain analytics and something called the travel rule,
Wait, what's the travel rule?
it's a regulatory requirement. It forces crypto firms to share identifying information alongside the transaction itself, just like traditional wire transfers do.
Oh, okay.
And it's now been adopted in 99 jurisdictions globally. Because investigators have that transparency and those analytic tools now, we actually saw a 34% jump in crypto suspicious activity reports in 2024.
Because the math of the blockchain doesn't lie.
It doesn't lie.
That's wild. But going back to the traditional banks, the materials highlight a structural flaw that seems almost comical. Fraud and AML are usually completely separate departments.
Completely siloed.
Isn't that like having one security guard watch a thief steal a TV and a totally different security guard watch them put it in the getaway car and explicitly telling them they aren't allowed to talk to each other?
That's precisely what is happening today. I mean, fraud generates the illicit funds, and AML is supposed to track where they go.
They're sequential steps in the exact same criminal workflow.
Yes. But because they sit in different silos, they create massive blind spots. An investigator in AML might see weird money movement, but has no idea it's connected to a synthetic identity that the fraud team was looking at yesterday.
So what's the fix? How do you tear down the wall between the guards?
The industry is moving towards something called FRAML, F-R-A-M-L.
Fraud and AML.
Exactly. The integration of fraud and AML, unified with cybersecurity, into a single intelligence function. You really have to be able to see the full life cycle of the attack, from the first unauthorized login to the final wire transfer, to have any hope of stopping it.
Okay, let's look at the big picture here. The foundational infrastructure is from the 1970s. The attackers are using autonomous AI at machine speed, and the defenders are siloed in different departments.
It's a perfect storm.
It perfectly explains why the people at the very top of the economy are literally pulling the fire alarm right now.
They absolutely are. I mean, just last week, on April 8th, 2026, Treasury Secretary Bessent and Fed Chair Jerome Powell held an emergency meeting.
And they didn't meet with tech leaders from Silicon Valley, did they?
No, they didn't. They met with the big bank CEOs, the heads of JP Morgan, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley. They aren't treating this as an IT department problem anymore.
No, they are treating this as a systemic financial stability crisis.
Exactly. Think about it. When the chair of the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Secretary call the biggest banks into a room to discuss an AI model, it means the perceived risk has fundamentally escalated.
They realize the domino effect.
Right. They realize that a single vulnerability found by an AI and cascading through those interconnected third-party vendors could theoretically freeze significant portions of the entire global financial system.
And that brings up a massive structural asymmetry in who gets protected.
Smaller banks.
Yeah. We mentioned earlier that about 50 elite organizations were given access to Project Glasswing to scan their systems. But there are thousands of credit unions, regional banks, and smaller financial institutions that process massive amounts of our money every day.
And they do not have access to those cutting-edge defensive tools.
Yet they share the exact same legacy infrastructure.
And they face the exact same autonomous threats, which is why the action plan is accelerating. Just this past Wednesday, on April 15, 2026, OpenAI launched GPT 5.4 Cyber.
Okay, what is that?
It's a tool specifically designed for verified security professionals to reverse engineer code and scan for vulnerabilities. The mandate from regulators right now is that smaller banks need to use these tools immediately to pressure test their systems.
But practically speaking, how do they do that? I mean, a smaller bank or a growth stage fintech is already spending anywhere from $300,000 to $800,000 a year just on basic human level compliance.
Budgets are tight.
They don't have the budget to hire a team of elite engineers to build an AI native detection system in-house.
They don't, which is why the entire model has to shift toward compliance as a service.
Outsourcing it.
Yes. Third-party providers are stepping in to offer continuous transaction monitoring and behavioral analytics on a subscription basis. Smaller institutions have to outsource the technology firepower, even if they legally retain the regulatory accountability.
He's trying to build this defense internally against an AI like Mythos is just a losing battle.
It's completely impossible for a small bank.
So what does this all mean for the timeline? If we only have this tiny window right now where the good guys have access to tools like Glasswing and GPT 5.4 Cyber, what happens when open source AI catches up?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because tech industry history tells us it always catches up. Is this basically a countdown timer for the global financial system?
Unfortunately, it is. It's never a matter of if attackers get these autonomous Mythos-level capabilities, it is only a matter of when.
Wow.
The open source community will replicate these models, and bad actors will remove the safety guardrails. The only survival strategy for the financial sector is continuous adaptation.
No more yearly checkups.
Exactly. The era of running a security audit once a year, checking a box and walking away is completely over. We're moving to a paradigm where systems must be scanned, patched, and evolved at machine speed forever.
That is heavy, but it's incredibly important to understand because your money, your mortgage, your personal data, they all live inside these interconnected legacy systems.
They do.
And the way you interact with your bank and the way you prove you are who you say you are is going to change permanently as a result of this AI arms race.
We are definitely shifting from a world of static, point-in-time security to one of constant fluid observation. And, that shift comes with a profound societal cost that we are really just beginning to grapple with.
Which brings us to a final, really chilling concept to leave you with today. We talked about behavioral biometrics earlier.
Right, the new defense.
How the bank defeats the AI by monitoring how hard you tap your screen, how quickly you scroll, the exact angle you hold your device, and the micro-hesitations of your thumb.
Every little movement.
Right. But if that continuous monitoring becomes the only foolproof way for a bank to know it's really you, what happens to our fundamental privacy?
It's a huge trade-off.
Think about it. When every microscopic twitch, every physical hesitation, and every subconscious physical habit is continuously monitored, recorded, and scored by a financial institution just to let you buy a cup of coffee, are we ultimately trading our physical privacy for our financial security?
Might just be.
It really brings you back to that image of the green picket fence. We might be able to patch that rotting hole in the wood. But to make sure nobody breaks it again, we are going to have to let the security guards watch every single move we make inside the yard.
You've been listening to What the F Happened? Fraud and Financial Crime Deconstructed, a Defend podcast by DataVisor. If you want to keep learning between episodes, check out Defend Training, a set of self-paced online courses for fraud and financial crime professionals, practical and built around real-world scenarios.
And you can earn CPE credits through the ACFE San Francisco Bay Area chapter. You can find it at datavisor.com/defendtraining. The link's in the description.
This episode's audio was generated using Google's Notebook LM, based on expert analysis and trusted sources. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.